I've already taken a look back at the forgotten heroes of Image Comics, but this time we're flipping the coin, because behind every overlooked hero stands an equally overlooked enemy. The kind of villain in the Image universe, who once shook their world but never found lasting fame. Some were gruesome experiments, others cunning masterminds, and a few were so strange they almost defy description. Today we're pulling them out of the shadows and taking a closer look at the villains of the Image universe. Hellspawn, the warlord who always lost at the finish line. Hellspawn wasn't just another 90s villain. He was Wildstorm's attempt at a cosmic level mastermind, the kind of antagonist built to feel like Darkseid or Thanos. A Daemonite High Lord, he crash landed on Earth thousands of years ago, after a war with the Cherubim, taking command of the surviving Daemonite elite. From the start, he was a schemer, orchestrating shadow organizations like the Cabal and manipulating human history. At some point, he possessed an Icurian host, granting him superhuman strength, telekinesis, energy projection, and near immortality. Across the decades, Hellspawn's schemes escalated from shadowy influence to outright invasion. In the 1970s, he attempted a nuclear annihilation to pave the way for Daemonite rule, only to be thwarted by Team 1. Fast forward to the 1990s, Hellspawn launched Project Reunification, assembling a new cabal to open a Stargate and bring a Daemonite invasion fleet to Earth. His plans almost succeeded, but Youngblood and the Wildcats, and even the unlikely interference of Dan Quayle stopped him. In a final twist, traitorous ally triggered an explosion that presumably killed Hellspawn. Not content to stay dead, Hellspawn returned under the alias James Werman, founder of the tech firm Pacifica. Using technology reverse engineered from Cherubim artifacts, he attempted to terraform Earth via the Planet Shaper. Mr. Majestic confronted him and ultimately disarmed him, seemingly ending the villain's saga. Even in a later Wildstorm relaunch, he appeared as a Daemonite hive mind in a metallic fiery body, containing the knowledge of every Daemonite. Hellspawn's story didn't end there. During DC's New 52, he was reintroduced as a freed prisoner from a lost Daemonite cell, and briefly clashed with Superman, Starfire, and Hawkman, claiming he sought to protect humanity from the corruption that destroyed his race. He attempted to recruit these heroes to his cause. Despite the dramatic setup, the storyline fizzled, and Hellspawn disappeared once again, leaving only hints of the threat he could have been. His powers were formidable: superhuman strength and durability, telepathy, telekinesis, energy blasts, possession, advanced alien technology, and in his hive mind form, near limitless intelligence. But despite all these abilities and universe-spanning powers, Hellspawn never cemented himself in the collective memory of comic readers. With fewer than 25 appearances and every major scheme ending in failure, he became the archetype for a forgotten god, built up as a cosmic-level threat only to vanish into obscurity. Modern stories could lean into Hellspawn's hive mind and centuries of plotting. He could re-emerge as a shadow villain or orchestrating conflicts between heroes and alien factions, subtly pulling strings across the universe. His protector of human genes angle could be expanded into morally gray storytelling, making him a villain with relatable motives rather than purely destructive force. Terraforming, possession, and advanced alien tech offer visually striking plot devices for high-stakes stories. For a fun twist, imagine Hellspawn wielding the power like the Sinestro Core Ring, with the ability to manifest constructs fueled by fear. His manipulative genius would reach terrifying new heights. He could turn entire planets into psychological battlegrounds, weaponizing fear to control humans, even the other heroes, all while coordinating Daemonite strategies. The combination of his intellect, alien powers, and fear-based abilities would elevate him from a forgotten cosmic schemer to a true universe-spanning nightmare. The main reason Hellspawn faded from memory is simple: over-ambition without follow-through. He was written as a universe-shaking threat, but most of his arcs ended in sudden betrayals, explosions, or Deus Ex Machina defeats. His appearances were sporadic across multiple titles, meaning no single series could build long-term tension or emotional investment. Additionally, the Wildstorm imprint itself was absorbed into DC, and much of its complex continuity was either retconned or erased, leaving Hellspawn stranded between universes. Even in his New 52 reboot, which briefly elevated him to a Superman-level threat, ended without any lasting impact. For now, he's a relic of the 90s, but one misstep, one portal, and Hellspawn could remind the universe why no villain should ever be underestimated. Overkill, the Mafia cyborg hitman. Nicholas Rocca was once a feared hitman for Sicilian mob boss Luciano Bartino, operating in a world of organized crime where failure meant death. His life took a radical turn when an ambush left him mortally wounded, and survival depended entirely on the genius and questionable ethics of his half-brother, Dr. Elin Hessman. Hessman negotiated with Bartino to fund his research in exchange for transforming Nicholas into an ultra-killing machine. The result was Overkill, a lethal fusion of human intelligence and cybernetic enhancement, designed to be both a weapon of the Mafia and a marvel of experimental science. After his resurrection, Rocca spent time isolated with Hessman at a cabin near Milan, where he studied art history and literature, cultivating a surprising cultural side, even as he prepared to carry out his deadly assignment. Despite his upbringing in the brutal world of the Sicilian mob, Overkill was capable of intellectual pursuits, a duality that made him both fascinating and unnerving. Killer who could quote Shakespeare between murders. His assignments took him around the globe, but his reputation for efficiency was quickly undermined by errors in intelligence and mistaken targets. One of Overkill's earliest and most famous missions was sent by Antonio Twistelli to eliminate Spawn, whom he mistakenly believed was responsible for killing mafiosos. Despite his immense power and combat skills, he was quickly defeated in the alleyways of New York, marking the first in a long line of failed assignments. Rebuilt and memory partially wiped after damaging Bartino's property, he was reassigned to kill Terry Fitzgerald under another mistaken identity. Mid-battle, a precise shot to his brain left him malfunctioning and wandering, muttering to himself. Over the years, he was rebuilt multiple times, serving under Jason Wynn and eventually resurrected by Al Simmons himself to become part of an undead team of minions. In this capacity, Overkill fought angels, demons, and other supernatural forces, even confronting Monolith, only to be destroyed almost immediately once again. Through his many rebirths, Overkill evolved from a human hitman into a cyborg who straddled the line between humanity and machine. Each rebuild increased his capabilities, advanced weaponry, cybernetic enhancements, and combat experience, yet also chipped away at his remaining sense of self. Even as he battled powerful enemies and survived events that would kill an ordinary man, his story remained a cycle of deployment, defeat, and reconstruction. He was, in a sense, a living embodiment of the consequences of unchecked experimentation and the expendable nature of hired killers. Despite his intriguing combination of intellect, combat skill, and cybernetic enhancements, Overkill fell into obscurity largely due to narrative treatment. He was repeatedly defeated and rebuilt, which turned him into a plot device rather than a character with lasting impact. His missions were often standalone arcs that ended in failure, and he rarely had a defining moment that cemented him in readers' memories. Additionally, his appearances were scattered across multiple issues and series, often overshadowed by more prominent characters like Spawn or Jason Wynn, making it difficult for audiences to connect with him as a recurring threat. Ironically, the very technology that made Overkill nearly indestructible also contributed to his forgettability. Each rebuild erased parts of his personality and history, preventing him from evolving into a fully realized character. While he has the makings of a deep, morally complex villain, a cultural assassin trapped in a cyborg body, wrestling with identity, loyalty, and morality, he was never given the narrative space to truly shine. He remains a fascinating concept, primed for reinvention, yet overlooked by both readers and writers for decades. Overkill has huge untapped potential as a modern villain. Writers could lean into the tension between the man he once was, Nicholas Rocca, a cultured strategic hitman, and the machine he has become. This duality opens the door to stories about identity, free will, and morality. Can Overkill reclaim any part of his humanity while being a living weapon? His cybernetic enhancements, including superhuman strength, precision targeting, rapid adaptability, make him a credible threat to even top-tier heroes, while his Mafia background allows for gritty street-level storytelling that contrasts beautifully with larger, supernatural, or cosmic conflicts. Story opportunities could include exploring the psychological consequences of repeated destruction and resurrection. Each time Overkill is rebuilt, his mind's partially reset, giving him enhanced abilities but further distancing from his human past. A modern storyline could depict him struggling with fragmented memories, slowly piecing together his identity while navigating allegiances between criminal syndicates, rogue operatives, or even supernatural forces. Writers could also position him as a morally ambiguous figure, someone who might side with the heroes or villains depending on his own goals and the programming left in his mind. Overkill could become a formidable strategist and enforcer, a cyborg whose intelligence, experience, and adaptability make him far more than just a disposable weapon. Chapel, assassin, betrayer, and Lord of Hell. Chapel was one of the early cornerstones of the Image universe, a brutal mercenary, a government assassin, and eventually one of Spawn's most infamous enemies. Created by Rob Liefeld in 1992 for Youngblood, Chapel was conceived as the ultimate Black Ops soldier, unflinching, deadly, loyal only to the mission. Bruce Stinson was trained in covert warfare, excelling in tactics, interrogation, and elimination methods that most soldiers wouldn't dare attempt. He was also enhanced with experimental chemicals that pushed him beyond human limits, giving him heightened strength, endurance, and speed. Unbeknownst to him, however, he was also injected with a dormant virus that his superiors could activate as a way to control or eliminate him. Chapel's defining act came when he was ordered by Jason Wynn to eliminate a fellow operative, Al Simmons. Obedient to the mission, Chapel carried it out, not knowing that his actions would set Simmons on the path to becoming Spawn. This betrayal made Chapel central to Spawn's origin, branding him as one of Image's most significant villains in the early 90s. Spawn never forgot. When the two eventually clashed, Spawn captured Chapel and permanently scarred his face, burning into him the grotesque skull visage that he would wear from then on. Far from humbling him, the disfigurement only deepened Chapel's rage, an obsession with power. He pursued Spawn again and again, desperate to uncover the secrets of resurrection. That desperation eventually drove him to take his own life, believing it would grant him the same rebirth that Simmons had experienced. Instead of becoming a Hellspawn, Chapel rose to the ranks of Hell itself, seizing control and declaring himself Lord Chapel after overthrowing Lucifer. Later, he was separated from this demonic form, bizarrely returned to the body of a woman named Gazer, only to eventually revert back to his original male form. These erratic shifts in identity left him unstable and directionless, and over time, his role in the Image universe diminished. For a time, Chapel was everywhere, in Youngblood, in Spawn, even his own solo series. But this momentum stalled. The character rights were tied up when Rob Liefeld left Image, which forced a retcon that replaced Chapel with Jessica Priest as the figure responsible for Al Simmons' death. This instantly erased some of his narrative importance. On top of that, Chapel's storylines became convoluted, shifting from soldier to demon lord to gender-swapped experiments, which alienated readers who saw him as a grounded, menacing figure. By the 2000s, he'd become more of a footnote than the imposing villain he once was. Chapel has all the raw ingredients for a powerful return. He's a perfect embodiment of the Dark Reflection archetype. A soldier who gave everything to the system and was rewarded only with betrayal, manipulation, and ruin. Modern writers could lead into this, exploring his fractured psyche, his resentment toward the institutions that created and discarded him, and his obsessive rivalry with Spawn. His enhanced abilities still make him a deadly opponent, but it's his mind, hardened by years of Black Ops service, scarred by betrayal, warped by his experiences in Hell, that make him truly dangerous. In today's comics landscape, Chapel could thrive as a morally bankrupt villain for hire, a mercenary who operates in the shadows of both the living world and the infernal one. Handled correctly, Chapel could reclaim his place as a flagship villain, a brutal reminder of the human cost of power and the thin line between soldier and monster. Miles Craven, the Shadow Architect. Miles Craven first appeared in Team 7 #1 in 1992, created by Brandon Choi and Jim Lee. A decorated hero during the Korean War, he was later recruited into the newly established CIA and went on to serve as a key intelligence advisor to the Pentagon during the Vietnam conflict. In the 1960s, Craven founded a covert network with the Defense Department called Internal Operations, or IO, designed to monitor and control criminally inclined superpowered beings. Craven's work quickly became entangled with extraterrestrial events. After attacks on U.S. defense projects by the alien Demonites, he was manipulated by the Cherubim Lord Saul Baxter into forming Team 1, a secret 7-member unit tasked officially with tracking unidentified life forms, but in reality meant to control evidence of alien activity. Team 1 included Cherubim warriors like Mr. Majestic, Zealot, and Backlash, among human operatives such as Henry Bendix and Isaiah King. Craven's leadership of this group set the stage for decades of shadowy operations that would define his villainous legacy. Following Team 1's dissolution, Craven leveraged his influence with the UN Shadow Council, MJ-12, to rise to the position of National Security Czar of the United States, overseeing a growing empire of clandestine operations targeting superheroes. Together with Bendix and General Zebulon McCandless, he formed a secret cabal, monitoring and controlling post-human activity through programs like Project Paragon and Number of the Beast, which included superhuman cloning and experimentation. Craven's ambition extended further with Project Genesis, a program designed to create genetically enhanced humans, and later Project Renaissance, aimed at preserving his life by transferring his consciousness into a clone body infused with Gen Factor powers. When Craven was finally confronted by the surviving members of Team 1, his consciousness was downloaded into the unstable Gen Omega clone, which was ultimately destroyed by Sigma, putting an end to his physical form. Despite his death, Craven's influence lingered. Investigations into his activities were obstructed by operatives like Mariah Craven and Ivana Bayou, ensuring that his shadowy legacy continued to shape IO's operations. His status remains officially location classified, cementing his reputation as manipulative, far-reaching villain whose schemes span decades. Despite his decades-long manipulations of superhumans, aliens, and government agencies, Kraven has largely faded from the spotlight. His final appearance as Gen Omega ended with his destruction, and subsequent stories have focused on other villains or heroic teams. Unlike visually striking or flashing villains, Kraven's threat was mostly strategic and behind the scenes, making him less memorable to casual readers. His role as a manipulative mastermind, rather than physically imposing combatant, contributed to his obscurity. Kraven's genius-level intellect, mastery of espionage, and decades of covert operations make him an ideal villain for modern storytelling. He could return as a hidden manipulator, pulling the strings behind the scenes to destabilize superhero teams, resurrect or weaponize gen-active humans, or orchestrate conflicts between alien factions on Earth. Storylines could explore new iterations of Team 7, secret experiments using leftover gen-factor technology, or conflicts between government and rogue superhumans. Modern Rival could portray Kraven as a shadowy puppet master, leveraging both old technology and new superhuman developments. He could serve as the architect behind a global conspiracy, forcing heroes and anti-heroes alike to uncover his plan piece by piece. Kraven's return could also explore the moral ambiguities of powers, the dangers of unchecked intelligence, and the lingering consequences of decades of covert human experimentation. By combining espionage, political intrigue, and superhuman elements, Kraven could emerge as a cerebral, terrifying villain in today's comics, a proper counterpart to the flashy, action-oriented villains that dominate Image's pages. The Wicked Worm Collective. Horde made his debut in Savage Dragon number 16 in 1994, created by Erik Larsen, and remains one of the most grotesque and unsettling villains in Image Comics' early years. Horde wasn't a singular entity, but a parasitic hive. His body made up of thousands of squirming, leech-like creatures known as the Wicked Worms. Each worm was capable of burrowing into a human host and taking complete control of their mind and body, effectively turning them into Horde slaves. The Wicked Worms were the creation of necromancer Abner Cadaver, who used them to overwhelm and possess the weakened mystic hero, Fonti. This act gave birth to the monstrous hive entity known as the Horde. With Fonti trapped inside him as an unwilling host, Horde quickly proved to be far more dangerous than just another Chicago supercriminal. He was a walking infestation with the potential to enslave anyone he encountered. Horde's early scheme struck directly at Dragon's ally. He caused the hero, Shrew, to go on a murderous rampage, manipulated Super Patriot into nearly killing Dragon, and even managed to possess Dragon himself, turning him into a weapon of destruction across Chicago. That incident was only stopped when another vigilante, Mace, unknowingly destroyed the worm controlling Dragon, but it showed just how terrifying Horde could be. With just one worm, he could topple entire heroes. In the wake of Overlord's death, Horde stepped fully out of the shadows and into Chicago underworld by enslaving members of the Vicious Circle. He seized control of the city's most feared criminal organization. Anyone who opposed him found themselves with the worm crawling inside their body, stripping them of free will and binding them to Horde's hive. He also plotted politically, conspiring with corrupt officials, and even manipulating the police into firing Dragon. Unlike some of Dragon's flashier rogues, Horde relied on a mix of parasitic domination and subtle manipulation, making him both terrifying and pragmatic. His reign ended in Savage Dragon number 50, when Dragon and a renegade faction of the Vicious Circle finally confronted him, using a special gas designed to wipe out the Wicked Worms. Dragon destroyed Horde and freed Fonti, breaking the entity's hold. A later backup in Savage Dragon number 100 confirmed Horde's destruction, showing there was no chance of him reforming without Fonti and his unwilling anchor. Horde's strength didn't lie in brute force, but his parasitic domination. Each wicked worm acted as an extension of his will, able to crawl inside a victim's body and seize full mental and physical control. Victims become the Horde's puppets, their memories and skills intact, but their loyalty stripped away. This allowed Horde to control heroes, villains, and civilians alike, creating an army out of whoever he needed. In addition, as a composite entity of thousands of worms, Horde was difficult to kill. Even if a host body was destroyed, as long as some worms survived, Horde could theoretically rebuild himself. Despite being one of Erik Larsen's creepiest creations, Horde's role in Savage Dragon was relatively short-lived. After his destruction in the 1990s, Larsen moved on to other villains like Cyberface and Overlord's successors, leaving Horde in the past. His body horror aesthetic and parasitic powers may have made him a bit too grotesque compared to the other more colorful rogues that dominated Image Comics' early years. As a result, Horde hasn't appeared in over 2 decades, relegated to memory as one of Dragon's strangest but most disturbing foes. Villains who embody parasitic horror never really go out of style. The fear of losing control of your own mind or body is universal, and Horde captures this perfectly. With today's audience more receptive of darker, creepier stories, Horde could easily thrive in a modern revival. Imagine him not just controlling a few street-level criminals, but embedding worms into politicians, police chiefs, even superheroes, turning Chicago or even the world into his personal hive. The easiest way to bring him back is through a surviving wicked worm. Perhaps one worm avoided destruction, mutating and evolving underground over the past 20 years. Instead of needing Fontaine to anchor him, this new version of the Horde could have learned to sustain itself through sheer numbers. Picture an entire city slowly being overtaken, with friends and enemies alike revealed to be the Horde's thrall. Battle wouldn't be just against one villain, it'd be against an infestation. When Image Comics first exploded into the scene in the 1990s, it was the heroes who got most of the attention. Flashy, edgy, larger-than-life figures who defined the era. But as we've seen, the villains were just as essential. They pushed those heroes to their limits, brought out the best and worst in them, and often carried stories that might have otherwise been forgotten. Characters like these remind us that even in comics, evil doesn't always need to be iconic to be effective. Sometimes it's a strange, unsettling, or one-off adversary that leaves the strongest impression. And that's why revisiting these forgotten villains matters. They show us a side of Image that was more experimental, more chaotic, and sometimes more daring than the heroes themselves. Because if the heroes are at the heart of the story, the villains are the ones who make it beat faster. So whether they lasted 50 issues or just a single arc, these villains deserve to be remembered. Not as throwaways, but pieces of the wild, unpredictable puzzle that made Image Comics what it was. If you enjoyed this look back at the darker side of Image's history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and let me know in the comments which forgotten villains you think deserve another shot. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one.